When we talk about loving yourself, it must begin with the recognition of your worth. This isn't just some fluffy statement that you repeat in front of a mirror and hope it sticks. It's a fundamental understanding that your life has meaning, that you as an individual are not here by accident. You're not some trivial piece of dust floating in the universe. You're a conscious being capable of thought, choice, responsibility, and transformation. And the very fact that you exist, that you can wrestle with your own doubts and struggles, points to a kind of sacred value that you carry within you. But the tragedy for most people is that they spend so much of their lives trying to measure that worth through the eyes of others, through approval, likes, applause, or fleeting admiration. And the truth is, that's a trap. Because if your worth depends on external validation, then it is fragile, and you will spend your entire life chasing something you can never fully hold. Recognizing your worth means you begin by facing yourself honestly. Not the polished version of yourself that you try to display on social media, not the version that wears masks to fit in with everyone else, but the raw, unfiltered self that you see when you strip away all the distractions, that person, the one who carries scars, regrets, fears, but also dreams, resilience, and strength. That's the one you have to learn to value. Your worth isn't found in the flawless image you try to project, but in the depth of who you are beneath it all. You are more than your mistakes, and you are more than the times you've failed. You are the sum of your struggles, your choices, your victories, and the potential still waiting within you. And let's be clear, recognizing your worth does not mean becoming arrogant or entitled. It doesn't mean you think the world owes you something. It means you accept responsibility for yourself because you matter enough to take that responsibility seriously. When you truly recognize your worth, you stop tolerating situations that diminish you. You stop settling for relationships that drain your soul. You stop pursuing paths that you know compromise your integrity. You realize that your time, your energy, your very life are valuable resources, and wasting them on things that pull you further from your purpose is not self-love, it's self-betrayal. But this is not an easy realization. It requires courage, because to recognize your worth means you must confront the lies you've told yourself. I'm not good enough. I don't deserve happiness. I'll never measure up. Those voices don't just appear out of nowhere. They are planted through rejection, through comparison, through criticism, through years of conditioning that make you doubt your own significance. And if you don't challenge them, they will dominate you. Recognizing your worth demands that you take those voices and hold them up to the light of truth. The truth is that no one else on this planet has your exact fingerprint, your exact mind, your exact story. That uniqueness itself is proof of your intrinsic value. Once you begin to see yourself this way, something shifts. You carry yourself differently. You don't walk into a room begging for people to like you. You walk in knowing that you bring something irreplaceable to the table. You don't compare yourself to others as much because you realize that comparison is meaningless. Your worth isn't determined by being better or worse than someone else. It's determined by the undeniable fact that you are here, alive, and capable of shaping the world in your own way. And perhaps the most powerful part of recognizing your worth is that it gives you a foundation to grow from. You don't pursue self-improvement because you think you're worthless and need to prove something. You pursue it because you already know you're worth the effort. You exercise, you learn, you take risks, you build discipline. Not because you're trying to fill an empty void, but because you value yourself enough to give your future the best possible version of you. That's not vanity, that's responsibility. So when you leave here today, don't fall back into the trap of measuring yourself against a false standard. Look inward and see the undeniable value that's already there. Recognize it, own it, live like it matters, because it does. And if you truly grasp that, you'll never walk through this life the same way again. We live in a world obsessed with perfection. Everywhere you look, you're bombarded with carefully curated images, polished performances, and the illusion that everyone else has it all figured out. And when you measure yourself against those illusions, it's easy to fall into despair. You see the cracks in your own character, the flaws in your personality, the failures in your past, and you think, something must be wrong with me. But here's the reality. Your imperfections are not proof of your inadequacy. They're evidence of your humanity. To love yourself, you must learn to embrace them, not as something to be ashamed of, but as vital parts of your story. Think about it. Every scar you carry, physical or emotional, tells the tale of a battle survived. Every mistake you've made has etched wisdom into your character, wisdom you couldn't have gained any other way. Perfection, if it existed, would be sterile, lifeless. It's your imperfections, your rough edges, your contradictions that make you real, relatable, and capable of growth. Imagine meeting someone who had never failed, never struggled, never stumbled. What would you learn from them? Nothing. They'd have nothing of value to teach you because wisdom is born in the struggle, not in the flawless performance. But people often fight against their imperfections as though denying them will make them disappear. They put on masks, hide their weaknesses, and pretend to be something they're not. And for a while, maybe that works. Maybe people are fooled, but deep down you know it's a facade, and the weight of carrying that mask eventually becomes unbearable. You end up feeling alienated not only from others, but from yourself. To embrace your imperfections is to drop the mask and face the truth. Yes, you are flawed, yes, you have made mistakes, but those flaws do not disqualify you from love, respect, or success. They make you more authentic, more capable of connecting with others, more equipped to navigate life with humility. The paradox is this: the more you run from your imperfections, the more power they hold over you. But when you turn around, face them, and even accept them, they lose their grip. That doesn't mean you stop striving to improve. It means you improve from a place of honesty rather than shame. You work on your weaknesses not because you hate yourself, but because you value yourself enough to grow. It's not about perfection, it's about progress, and the path to progress begins with acceptance. Think of the people you admire most, not for their accomplishments, but for their character. Chances are they aren't perfect. What draws you to them is their resilience, their vulnerability, their ability to be real. They show you that strength isn't the absence of weakness. It's the courage to carry on despite it. And that's the invitation for you as well. Stop running from your imperfections and instead integrate them into your identity. They are not roadblocks on your path. They are stepping stones shaping the person you're becoming. Your you also begin to cultivate compassion, but others. You stop expecting yourself to be superhuman, and you stop holding others to impossible standards. You realize that everyone is stumbling forward in their own way, carrying their own unseen burdens. And that awareness creates space for kindness, patience, and forgiveness. It makes you stronger, not weaker. So don't chase the mirage of perfection. It's a dead end. Instead, stand firm in the reality of who you are. Flaws, scars, and all. Because those imperfections are not a mark of failure. They are the proof that you are alive, still learning, still fighting, still capable of becoming more tomorrow than you are today. And if you can embrace that truth, you'll no longer be paralyzed by the fear of being imperfect. You'll be liberated by the power of being real. One of the most overlooked expressions of self-love is the ability to set boundaries without guilt. Most people struggle with this because they've been conditioned to believe that saying no makes them selfish, unkind, or ungrateful. They live under the illusion that their worth is tied to how much they can sacrifice for others, how much they can endure without complaint, how often they can make themselves available at the expense of their own well-being. But here's the truth. If you cannot say no, then your yes has no meaning. Without boundaries, you dissolve into a life of resentment, exhaustion, and quiet despair. Boundaries are not walls to shut people out. They are lines of respect that communicate clearly, "This is where I end and where you begin." They are the framework that protects your time, your energy, and your identity from being consumed by demands that don't serve your higher purpose. Think of it this way. Your life is finite, your energy is limited, your time is irreplaceable. Every time you say yes to something that drains you or compromises your values, you are stealing from the version of yourself you could have been. You are trading authenticity for approval, and that is a terrible bargain. People often feel guilty when they draw boundaries because they imagine they're letting others down. And sometimes they are. But here's the difficult reality. You will let people down no matter what you do. You cannot meet every expectation. You cannot satisfy every demand. And if you try, you'll end up losing yourself in the process. The question is not whether you'll disappoint people. The question is who you are willing to disappoint. If you choose to disappoint yourself just to avoid disappointing others, you have sacrificed the very core of your being. When you set boundaries, you are not being cruel. You are being responsible. You are acknowledging that your health, your purpose, and your inner peace matter. And, ironically, by protecting yourself in this way, you actually give the best of yourself to others. Because when you're not constantly drained, when you're not weighed down by resentment, when you're not living in quiet rebellion against your own choices, you can show up with clarity, strength, and authenticity. People may resist at first. They may accuse you of being selfish or cold, but in time, the right people will respect you more for it. They'll see that you know who you are, and they'll know where they stand with you. That kind of clarity builds healthier, stronger relationships than endless self-sacrifice ever could. It's also worth noting that boundaries are not only for others, they're for you. Sometimes the hardest boundaries to set are the ones you must draw with yourself. You must say no to your own distractions, your own destructive habits, your own impulses that drag you away from what matters most. Discipline, in many ways, is a form of boundary setting. It's saying, "I refuse to betray my future self for the comfort of this moment." That's not punishment. That's love expressed in action. Of course, none of this is easy. The first time you assert a boundary, you will feel guilt tugging at you, whispering that you're being unfair or unkind. But guilt is not always a sign of wrongdoing. Often, it's just the echo of an old pattern breaking apart. Over time, the guilt fades, and in its place grows a quiet confidence that you are living in alignment with your values. And that's when you realize something liberating. You don't have to apologize for protecting your peace. You don't have to justify respecting yourself. So learn to draw the line without shame. Say no when you must, yes when it's genuine, and mean both. Because a life without boundaries is a life lived for everyone else. But a life with them is a life you can finally call your own. And that, in the end, is what self-love truly demands, that you claim ownership of your life and live it as if it actually matters. If you truly want to love yourself, you must make the decision to prioritize your growth and your healing. Too many people live as though growth is optional, as though they can simply drift through life, repeat the same mistakes, nurse the same wounds, and somehow expect things to improve. But life does not get better by accident. It gets better because you take responsibility for making it better. Healing and growth are not luxuries. They are necessities, and if you neglect them, the cost is heavy. You carry the weight of your pain into every relationship, every opportunity, every moment of your future, and it robs you of the life you could have lived. Healing begins with courage. It requires that you confront the things you've been running from, the broken trust, the disappointments, the regrets you've tried to bury under busyness or distraction. You cannot heal what you refuse to face. And if you ignore those wounds long enough, they don't disappear, they fester. They show up in the form of anger you can't control, bitterness you can't shake, or fear that paralyzes you when opportunity calls. Loving yourself means you care enough to stop numbing yourself and start mending yourself. It means you value your future enough to untangle the chains of your past. Growth is inseparable from healing, because once you've faced the pain, you must decide what to do with it. Do you let it define you as a permanent victim, or do you use it as fuel to become stronger, wiser, and more capable? Growth is about moving beyond survival into purpose. It's about learning, stretching, developing the kind of discipline and vision that takes you from where you are to where you could be. And it's not comfortable. Growth often feels like breaking apart before you're rebuilt. It feels like failure before it feels like progress. But without that process, you remain stuck in cycles that keep you small. The truth is, prioritizing growth and healing demands sacrifice. It may mean walking away from relationships that keep reopening your wounds. It may mean investing time, money, and effort into learning new skills, into therapy, into practices that strengthen your body and sharpen your mind. It may mean enduring seasons of loneliness as you shed old versions of yourself and grow into someone new. But every sacrifice has a payoff, and in this case, the reward is becoming a person capable of carrying the weight of your own life with dignity. And here's something people often miss. When you prioritize your growth and healing, you don't just change yourself. You change the lives of those around you. Your children inherit a different future because you broke the cycle. Your relationships deepen because you are no longer ruled by unhealed wounds. Your community benefits because you bring clarity and resilience instead of chaos and bitterness. Your growth doesn't stop with you, it radiates outward and transforms everything you touch. It's tempting, of course, to delay this process, to tell yourself, I'll deal with it later, I'll start tomorrow. But tomorrow is always one step further away, and the longer you wait, the more life slips by unlived. Growth and healing happen only when you choose them today, in this moment, with all the imperfection and uncertainty that comes with it. So, do not underestimate the importance of this decision. Love yourself enough to confront your pain, to learn, to sacrifice, to rise. Because the person you are today is only the beginning, and the person you could become is waiting. And the only way you will ever meet them is if you make the choice right now to grow and to heal. Loving yourself cannot remain an abstract idea. It must be lived out in action, and one of the clearest ways you live it is through the practice of daily self-care. Now, self-care is often misunderstood. Many people reduce it to indulgence, spa days, desserts, vacations. And while those things can play a role, true self-care runs much deeper. It's not about escaping your life for a few moments of comfort. It's about building a life you don't constantly feel the need to escape from. It's the consistent, often small, choices you make every single day that signal to yourself, I matter, my well-being matters, my future matters. Self-care is as practical as it is profound. It's choosing to get enough sleep rather than scrolling mindlessly until 2 in the morning. It's nourishing your body with food that fuels you, not food that leaves you sluggish and ashamed. It's moving your body through exercise, walking, stretching not to punish yourself, but to honor the machine that carries you through this world. These choices may feel small in the moment, but they compound over time, and every time you make them, you're sending a message to your subconscious. I value myself enough to take care of myself. That repetition builds identity, but self-care isn't just physical. It's emotional and spiritual too. It's taking time to sit in silence, to reflect, to journal, to pray, to think deeply about who you are and where you're going. It's limiting the noise, the endless barrage of media and comparison, and creating space for clarity. Because if your mind is constantly overloaded with distraction, you lose sight of what matters. And when you lose sight of what matters, you drift into lives of quiet desperation. Daily self-care is how you keep your bearings. It's how you realign with your values before the world sweeps you away. Another part of self-care is learning to celebrate your small victories. Too often, people only reward themselves when they've achieved something grand, some major milestone. But the truth is, your life is built in the ordinary days, in the small, repeated choices. If you wait to only honor yourself when you've climbed the mountain, you'll miss the thousands of steps that made the climb possible. To care for yourself is to pause, to acknowledge progress, to be grateful for the discipline it took just to move forward today. Of course, some will argue they don't have time for this. They're too busy, too responsible for others, too overwhelmed. But the irony is that neglecting self-care makes you worse at every role you play. When you're burned out, irritable, and exhausted, you are less of a parent, less of a partner, less of a friend, less of a leader. Taking care of yourself is not selfish, it's strategic. It allows you to show up in the world as someone strong, stable, and dependable. The people you love don't benefit from your self-neglect. They benefit from your well-being. Daily self-care also requires honesty. You must be willing to ask yourself, what do I actually need? Sometimes it's rest, sometimes it's discipline, sometimes it's solitude, sometimes it's connection. If you don't listen, you risk medicating your needs with the wrong solutions, chasing temporary relief instead of true renewal. Real care is intentional. It comes from knowing yourself well enough to give yourself what you actually require. The most powerful thing about daily self-care is that it builds momentum. One good choice leads to another. Over weeks and months, those small, seemingly insignificant acts accumulate into a foundation of strength, and one day you look back and realize that your life feels lighter, clearer, stronger, not because of one massive decision, but because of the daily devotion to yourself. So don't wait until you're broken to start taking care of yourself. Begin now with whatever small step you can take today. Because every act of care is a declaration. You are worth the effort. And the more you live out that truth, the more unshakable it becomes. If you truly want to love yourself, you must learn to believe in your future self. It's not enough to recognize your worth in the present moment or to care for yourself today. You must also look ahead and trust that who you are becoming is worth the sacrifices, the discipline, and the effort you put in now. Too many people sabotage themselves because they can't see past the immediate struggle. They think the pain of change is pointless, that the effort is wasted, that nothing will ever be different. But here's the truth. Your future self is real. That person is waiting for you. And every choice you make in this moment is either investing in that future or robbing it blind. Believing in your future self means holding onto the vision of who you could be even when the present feels heavy, even when failure seems closer than success. It means recognizing that you are not a finished product, you are a work in progress, and progress requires patience. The problem is that we're often impatient with ourselves. We want transformation overnight, and when it doesn't happen, we give up. But growth doesn't unfold in dramatic leaps. It unfolds quietly through countless small decisions. Believing in your future self is the decision to keep showing up for those small, consistent steps even when no one else notices, even when you're the only one who believes it matters. And it does matter. Every book you read, every workout you complete, every hour you spend refining a skill, every temptation you resist, every honest conversation you have, all of it stacks up. It doesn't always feel significant in the moment, but it compounds over time. Just like interest in a bank account, your effort multiplies. And before you know it, the person you once only imagined begins to emerge in reality. That is the reward of faith in your future self. But this belief isn't only about success and achievement. It's also about resilience, because your future self will face difficulties too. Life will not suddenly become free of pain, disappointment, or challenge. But the stronger, wiser version of you that you are building now will be equipped to handle them. Believing in your future self is choosing to suffer now in meaningful ways, so you are prepared for the unavoidable suffering later. You're not eliminating hardship. You're preparing yourself to meet it with courage rather than despair. One of the most destructive lies people tell themselves is that it's too late. Too late to change, too late to grow, too late to become someone better. But time is going to pass whether you act or not. The question is, who will you be when it does? A year from now, you could be stronger, healthier, more disciplined, more fulfilled. Or you could be the exact same, perhaps even worse off, because you chose the comfort of stagnation over the discomfort of growth. Believing in your future self is refusing to surrender to that lie of finality. It's choosing to trust that no matter where you are today, there is always a step forward you can take. And here's the beautiful thing. When you believe in your future self, you begin to treat yourself differently in the present. You stop making choices that sabotage your tomorrow for the sake of today's fleeting comfort. You stop betraying yourself with excuses. You live with a sense of accountability, not just to who you are now, but to who you could become. That awareness sharpens your discipline, deepens your resilience, and strengthens your sense of purpose. So when you find yourself doubting, when you feel stuck, when you hear the voices telling you that it's pointless, remember this. The person you are becoming is depending on the person you are right now. Your future self is counting on you. Do not let them down. When it all comes together, the message is simple yet profound. Loving yourself is not some shallow slogan. It is the foundation upon which you build everything else in your life. It begins by recognizing your worth, understanding that your existence has meaning, that you are not here by accident. It grows as you embrace your imperfections, learning to see them not as limitations, but as marks of your humanity and stepping stones toward growth. It strengthens when you set boundaries without guilt, protecting your time, your energy, and your integrity. It deepens when you commit to your own healing and growth, refusing to remain a prisoner of your past and instead choosing responsibility for your future. It flourishes through daily self-care, the consistent, deliberate actions that tell you I matter. And ultimately, it calls you to believe in your future self, to trust that who you are becoming is worth every ounce of effort you put in today. If you take these truths seriously, you will walk through life differently. You will no longer beg the world to confirm your value, because you will already know it. You will no longer waste your energy pretending to be perfect, because you will have the courage to be real. You will no longer shrink to please others, because you will be living in alignment with who you are meant to be. And the world will respond, not because you demanded it, but because authenticity commands respect in ways pretense never could. So choose to love yourself, not in theory, not as a wish, but as a daily practice of courage, honesty, and responsibility. Because the moment you do, you unlock the possibility of living a life that truly matters. And that, in the end, is the greatest gift you could ever give to yourself and to the world.